With us for the duration, the leader of the UK Independence Party, Nigel Farage. Welcome back to the programme.
Thank you.
Now, what he said there this morning is that he was looking for measures to accelerate the number of women working for top of British firms, saying he wants a target of around 30%. He's also said he won't rule out quotas as a way of getting there, but not just yet. A good idea, Nigel Farage?
Well, it's not his idea, of course. The European Parliament have just voted for this in principle, and the European Commission, we're told, will bring legislation forward very shortly. So the 30% quota won't be a British government decision. It'll be something imposed on us from Brussels.
Is it a good idea, though?
No, I don't believe in quotas, and whilst it may seem unfair that fewer women reach the top of FTSE companies, the fact is that there aren't as many women that actually want to do those very demanding 7-day-a-week jobs. And let's be honest, a lot of women have children, and it is very difficult in that corporate jungle to get to the top if you have to take time off 2 or 3 times during your career.
And I suppose if you look at some of the Nordic countries in terms of things like parental leave and flexible working hours and flexible pay, in some that would make it easier, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they have
to make the choice that you said.
Yeah, they have a different approach, and of course the state is very happy to cover all of the costs for maternity leave and things like this. But the point is, if you're working, I talked about the corporate jungle. Quite honestly, the people that get to the top utterly dedicate themselves to these jobs, and they do it year after year after year. And if you do take 6 months off, you are disadvantaged. It's just as simple as that.
So really, the status quo would change if there weren't these sort of quotas, and you say that would be fine because it's too difficult?
Not because it's too difficult, but because I think a lot of women make other life choices.
But what about, I mean, let's look at your party, for example. How many female UKIP MEPs are there?
Well, we've got 2. And our party director is female. Indeed, on our Assembly list for London for the elections in May, we've got female barristers and shipbrokers. But I don't believe in quotas, and certainly in UKIP, if people get on, they do so on ability.
I mean, the Prime Minister saying it would actually help the economy. There is actually an economic reason to have those quotas.
I don't know where he gets that
right,
from.
Yeah.
I really
so
don't know where he
gets that from. The government figures that basically say it would...
He is spouting the EU line, because this is exactly what the recommendation in the European Parliament that we voted for, I didn't vote for it, said.
The Bank of England has frozen interest rates. They're still at 0.5%. That's not surprising. It's also extending its programme of what is called technically quantitative easing, basically the electronic creation of new money. It's going to do so by 50 billion. Now, that's a little less than the City thought. It was thinking they may be up to 75 billion. But it began with 75, it got up to 200 billion, it then did another 75 billion. It's now added another 50 billion. That takes total printing of money up to £325 billion. We've never had that before, Joe.
The Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee cut interest rates to 0.5%, if you remember, in March 2009, a record low. Well, since then, they haven't shifted for almost 3 years. At the same time, the bank began its programme of quantitative easing, creating new money to buy financial assets with the hope of boosting economic activity. The first round of QE created £75 billion. That's been increased in several stages to £275 billion in October last year. And now, with a further £50 billion announced today, creating new money and keeping interest rates down would be expected to cause inflation. So at a time when the Consumer Prices Index is well above target at 4.2%, you might wonder why the bank is sticking with the programme.
Do you accept, Matthew Hancock, that one of the main consequences of QE is to transfer wealth from savers to borrowers?
No, I don't think that's one of the main...
It keeps interest rates low.
It has an impact on interest rates, but we manage our macro economy by altering interest rates, and of course it has different impacts on different people. Our argument has always been you want fiscal responsibility and monetary activism, where the monetary side keeps the economy going whilst you do the difficult stuff on the...
But you're printing money to finance the debt.
Well, the Bank of England is well, it's not technically printing money, but it's carrying out quantitative easing.
Hold on. The government issued £17 billion worth of gilts in October last year. The bank bought £17 billion worth of gilts. In November, the government issued £12 billion worth of gilts. The bank bought £24 billion worth of gilts. In 2012 so far, the government has issued £16 worth of government debt. The bank's bought £24 billion You are monetising the debt. You say the bank is
Some
independent.
good news. Yes.
George Osborne cheerleads the bank in doing this. He's invented this phrase, monetary activism. You are monetising the debt. You are borrowing money which is paid for by money printed by the bank. But do you support this further round of quantitative easing?
Well, anything that can somehow stimulate the economy we desperately need. George Osborne said that printing money was, quote, the last resort of a desperate government. Now, Matthew, you were his chief of staff at the time.
All right, let's try and stick with...
Did you advise him to say that?
No,
Didn't we?
Nobody really cares what he said then. Let's stick
Well, I
with
think it's quite
20...
important.
let me tell you, I don't care. And I ask the question.
Okay, well, okay. I think
Let me
people
ask,
care.
as a Conservative, meant to encourage people to save, to build up their own property, a party that espouses a property-owning democracy, are you comfortable as a Conservative with a policy which is effectively state-imposed negative real interest rates?
The state always has a role in the level of interest rates
But are
through
you
the Bank of
comfortable with
England.
state-imposed negative real interest
Well,
rates?
they're not the long interest rates are not imposed by the state, as you well know. They're imposed by the bond market, whether we like it or not. And so
But you're flooding the bond
but
market
do I
with,
think
you're
do I
flooding the
think-
bond market
Yeah,
with
okay,
money
so-
to depress long-term interest
I'll
rates,
answer it-
Matthew Hancock.
I'll answer it
This
this
is O-level
way.
economics we're trying to teach you.
Hardly.
I think it's
As
gone
if I
too far.
didn't really
I
quite know.
No, I completely understood why, back in 08, 09, QE was used, because there was a real serious scare about the banks. That has now gone. I think our savers are getting an absolutely rotten deal. And I think the real problem is we're not dealing with the size of the debt. You know, Osborne, I know it's difficult, and we're not having any serious growth in the UK economy. I think they're the real problems that need to be addressed.
If I say one thing to that, you've got some people saying we're cutting too fast. You've got some people saying we're
Stimulating the economy.
cutting too slowly.
You're not cutting.
The government needs exactly.
No,
So some say
you're not
not
cutting.
cutting enough.
You're not
Some
cutting
say
at
you're
all.
cutting too much. As a government, if you're being criticised from both sides, you're
I
normally
don't
in the
think
right
that you're
You're
not
not
place.
cutting at all, are you? In fact, you know, we're borrowing far more than we're earning every year.
Does mean you're all wrong.
What will it be? What
You know,
will it be
we've
this
got one
year?
extreme over here and another extreme over there, and
just
we're
because
more
you're-
broadly down the middle, and I feel pretty
Come
comfortable
on, mate, are
in
you
that.
cutting?
in that-
You don't look
Are you
very
cutting
comfortable.
government spending? Yes or no?
The departmental
No, let's not go
budgets
to
are
the
going
government
down.
spending.
You know,
I want to
we've
stick...
been-
Can I just point out that several months ago, the Bank of England snuck out in small print of 6-point type that the effect of its quantitative easing so far had been to raise inflation by anything between 1 and 2.6%. I think, no, inflation, between 1 and 2.6%. I think we can take it that it's closer to the 2.6 because the bank wanted to downplay the real effect. Are you comfortable with that? Inflation hits the poorest. So you're squeezing savers in Middle England and you're hitting the poorest by putting inflation up. Is that Tory economic policy? The distinguished economic editor of The Scotsman this morning says that the bank may end up printing £600 billion.
Now, was the England football manager Fabio Capello right to resign? I am, of course, an expert on this. It's the talk of the tea room over the road, just as it is all over the country. What about you? Do you think it should be an Englishman?
I was astonished when this chap Capello was appointed, and he's been there for a few years. He's earned 24 million quid. He couldn't even speak the language when he was appointed.
I know everyone
why
says that, but
can't
why
we have somebody English running the English football
Well, because
team?
maybe they couldn't find anyone good enough
Well,
to
I tell
do
you
it.
what, nobody could have done a worse job than Capello has done. And I must say, I think Harry Redknapp, he's probably got a bit of a debt to pay to Spurs, but I think Redknapp's going to be the next man, and good.
All right, then. We have got a consensus. Everyone wants Harry, I think.
I agree
Right.
too, whatever
Okay.
it was.
Now, our guest of the day, Nigel Farage, is, of course, the leader of the UK Independence Party. Still, he gave up the job for a bit when he stood against the Speaker, John Bercow, at the last election. So, does the party have strength in depth?
It's a reality. UKIP have become an electoral thorn in other parties' sides. Nigel Farage led them at the 2009 European Parliament elections, and UKIP got the second highest share of the popular vote. His attacks in the European Parliament are both praised and damned.
You have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk. And the question that I want to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you.
So you're a one-man band?
Absolute nonsense.
Well, no one's heard of anybody else in the party.
Oh, you had, just the other week, you had Lord Hesketh sitting in this very chair. He joined the party last year.
Well, only
I
Lady
mean,
Hesketh's heard of him.
We've even got grandees now in UK.
Who?
well, Hesketh being one. Stuart Wheeler last year became our treasurer, which I think sent a very good message. And I was looking this morning.
He's not a politician, though, really, is he? He bankrolls you.
He
used to bankroll the Tories.
He certainly bankrolled William Hague, didn't he?
Yeah.
But I think when people like that take on senior jobs within the party, it says we're far more than a one-man band. And I was looking this morning at our list for the London Assembly elections, and there we have men and women in their 30s and 40s, barristers, stockbrokers, shipbrokers, very professional, very competent people. There's been a big change in UKIP over the last couple
How
of years.
many people are standing in those elections for you?
Well, there are 25 in all.
You've got in all, and you've got someone
Of course,
standing...
of course.
Right, yeah.
And I'm very confident that on our message, jobs and growth, interestingly, back to the previous conversation, that we're so hamstrung by EU law that we're not able to go out there and create jobs in this country that we're going to do well. Just look, in 2011, we made a lot of progress in those opinion polls. We started the year off at 2.5% to 3%. We finished it up to 7.5%. That was big progress for us.
And you rate quite well in the polls as a leader, but the public sees you as a one-man band leading a one-issue party.
Well, I think that's unfair, and I think...
But that's how they see you.
No, I think, there are people like my deputy, Paul Nuttall, who is only 34, a Scouser, who's beginning to appear on more and more BBC programmes, and they're going to get to see more of him. And as far as...
But we've had Stuart Wheeler on.
Yeah, well, there we are. So there's 3 or 4 names here already that have been on
But
this
not
programme.
but not some of the younger ones in the party.
Well, get him on, and we're going to get people elected to that London Assembly who are very, very bright and young.
What's the target for 2012? What will be another amazing year for you if you achieve what?
Well, the thing we have to do this year is we have to win seats in the London Assembly. If we fail to do that, then 2012 will have been a failure. So that is the big objective, is to get people elected there. We will also, of course, be continuing to fight by-elections, local elections. And in Barnsley last year, for argument's sake, we came second in the by-election in Barnsley. And I would obviously look for that trend in the opinion polls to continue. We were, up until the summit, where Cameron was thought to have vetoed something, we were running neck and neck with the Lib Dems, and I expect that trend to continue, and I think we can get past them.
But even the Greens have their own MP now in Brighton. You haven't managed that.
Well, the problem we have is that our support is spread across the country. There are UKIP votes in Tory areas, there are UKIP votes in Labour areas. We don't have...
Aren't the Greens spread across the country?
No,
thinly?
Absolutely not.
Do much better than you locally, though, don't they, in terms of councils and...
Greens do well in 3 or 4 big cities, and very poorly everywhere else. We tend to do very respectably everywhere. That is part of our problem, and it's why what we've got to try and do is build up a local government base. There are areas now where we have got district and county councillors, and they're the areas that we've got to work on.
But like the Greens and the Lib Dems in the early days, you have to build that up from the ground up, don't you? That's more difficult.
It's a heck of a job, and I'm not pretending it's easy, but we are making progress.
Let's look at some of the policies then beyond the one that you're famous for. What about an English Parliament? Scots have got a Parliament, the Welsh have got a Parliament, Northern Ireland's got an Assembly. What about an English Parliament?
Absolutely, and at our last conference, it was the first time we put this on the table, and we said we now as a party believe in an English Parliament, and actually believe in a federal structure for the United Kingdom.
Where would you put the English Parliament?
Well, I think the English Parliament should be in the House of Commons.
But that's the British Parliament.
Well, to be honest with you, I don't see any need for Scottish or Welsh or Northern Irish MPs to come and debate things that are English-only issues. And most of the business that is conducted there tends to be on English-only issues.
But wouldn't it be more symbolic to have a separate parliament, and then the country, if it stays a united kingdom after the Scottish referendum, comes together in Westminster, which would be kind of, quote, the imperial parliament for the whole of the UK?
The proposal that we're currently debating, it's not yet party policy, is that the House of Commons would be the English Parliament, and the House of Lords, which is in need of reform, would in fact become a union parliament. That's the way we're going with this.
Wouldn't it be good for regional policy if you put it in York?
Well, look, I don't think there is any appetite for yet more buildings, yet more layers of... I mean, the idea that we have another 500 MPs for England,
well,
I don't think we need to do that.
500. I mean, the Senate in America is by with 100. What about High Speed 2? Are you in favour of that?
Completely opposed to it. It is a ridiculous price. It is completely the wrong route, and it's astonishing that all 3 parties support it. I know this was agreed to in Brussels many, many years ago. Perhaps that's why nobody can contemplate opposing it. But I would have thought we could spend a fraction of the money upgrading the existing lines.
And come the Scottish referendum, if the question is roughly along the lines of do you think Scotland should be independent, how will you advise your supporters to vote?
Well, there has to be a debate in Scotland. Alex Salmond has got away with murder.
Yeah.
This idea that Scotland can be independent and yet part of a European Union, let's have that debate.
But how are you going to vote?
I don't want the United Kingdom to break up, but I do want it to change.
Right, but you are the United Kingdom Independent
Yes.
Party, so you must be in favour of the Union.
I'm in favour of the United Kingdom,
Okay.
but I'm also in favour of devolved powers. And I don't see any inconsistency with that. The genie's out of the bottle, things have changed.